Hey gang, it's Ross. Pardon the mess around me. Still haven't really unpacked after moving into the new house. And I know it's a semi professional background here at best, but I just wanted to talk with you for a minute. I don't get too exercised about politics, right? It is what it is. It's a game a lot of people play. It's important. It's more important than a game, but it's going to be what it's going to be most of the time. And there's not that much point in getting upset about it most of the time. I also don't get upset about Donald Trump most of the time. I'm one of the few people who's probably somewhat ambivalent about him. I think he's very good on some things, very bad on some things. I think he's of slightly higher than average intelligence. I don't think he's brilliant or anything. I also don't think he's a moron. What else? I think he's a populist, which means he gets some things right, he gets some things wrong. It's always by accident. I don't think he's a very good person. I don't think he's particularly ethical. That's an understatement. But I'm also just kind of trying to look at him as far as is he doing a good job? So mostly my analysis is limited to is this policy good or not? And then also is this policy constitutional or not, which is actually the first filter. If the policy is unconstitutional, then I don't care about whether it has a good outcome or not. It just shouldn't be allowed. Anyway, that's a little bit of a framework for how I think about politics. Now, on yesterday's show on KOA, I got very exercised about this settlement between the DOJ and Donald Trump and his family, and actually unnamed affiliated people. And there are a couple things going on. So, first, Donald Trump dropped a lawsuit that he could not have won anyway, in my opinion, and it may have been barred by the statute of limitations. And the whole thing was nonsense. But he filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the government. Actually, let me be clear. When I say it was nonsense, I don't want to be too flippant about that. He really was wronged when a contractor, not an employee, but a contractor, a guy named Littlejohn, who is now in federal prison, stole a bunch of tax returns and released them, and some of Donald Trump's tax returns got released to the public. So that was bad. But I think a $10 billion lawsuit is pretty nuts. After all, in order to win something, you've got to show damages. You got to prove what the damages were. Even if he had standing to sue and it wasn't time barred, I don't think he could have proven that. And now he's talking about suing his own government. How are they going to defend against a president who's in office at the time? The whole thing is very, very messy. So the suit got dropped in return for the Department of Justice doing a couple of key things. One, they created this fund with 1776, very patriotic number, million, or 1.776 billion, let's round it to $1.8 billion, that I and many other people think of as a slush fund. And they describe it as a fund that is to be used to compensate people who were mistreated by government, people who were targeted by government. And to be sure, there were a lot of those people, a lot of conservatives, friends of Trump, or supporters of Trump, and so on, who were gone after by government during the Biden administration. And the Biden administration was absolutely corrupt when it came to this kind of stuff. Now, the January 6th stuff is tricky, though, because while the Biden administration went after a bunch of people who definitely deserved and got prison time until Trump pardoned them or commuted their sentences, mostly he pardoned them, there were also a bunch of people who didn't do nearly enough for the Justice Department to have gone after them as aggressively as they did. So that's legit. But then to say, we're going to create this new kind of spending not authorized by Congress, we're going to take the money out of another fund for some other almost similar purpose that was authorized by Congress. We are going to allow 5 people chosen by Trump's former personal attorney, who is now acting attorney general. 5 people chosen by him will decide who gets the money if they come make a claim that they were mistreated by government. This is nonsense. This is as corrupt a thing as I've ever seen. Actually, no, because the thing I'm going to tell you in a moment is more corrupt, and it's on the same piece of paper, but we only learned about it later. You know for sure that mostly MAGA people will get this money as it's distributed. In fact, J.D. Vance, vice president, who was subbing for the press secretary yesterday, made a comment during that press conference that Tina Peters, the former Mesa County clerk right here in Colorado, who stole somebody's identification, gave it to an unauthorized person, allowed that unauthorized person to go into the room where the computer systems were being stored, but only after she turned off the security cameras, and then allowed that person access to the systems and to duplicate the hard drives. She knew she was breaking the law. Otherwise, why turn off the cameras? Why steal someone else's identity? If it was fine and you're the boss, just go in with the cameras on. Bring your guy in. She knew she was committing a crime. She deserved prison time. And she maybe deserves a commutation, but not to as short a sentence as Governor Polis has done, letting her out after only 20 months. But I digress. J.D. Vance said, well, all she really should have been accused of, if anything, was misdemeanor trespassing. Are you kidding me? And maybe Tina Peters would be a great fit for someone to receive money from this fund. So first of all, Tina Peters is a convicted felon and deserves to be. Second of all, Tina Peters is convicted in state court. You would think that this slush fund is for people who were accused or mistreated or jailed by the federal government. But anyway, you can just imagine that kind of person. Imagine Mike Lindell. Imagine General Flynn. Imagine Rudy Giuliani. Imagine all these people going to the federal government and having these cronies of Trump, although separated by one layer with Todd Blanche picking them. Imagine them putting their hands out and getting $100,000, $1 million, $50 million. Who knows what the numbers will be? There's $1.8 billion ostensibly in this fund. And yeah, they'll probably give some money to a few Democrats so they can have a press conference or a press release saying, hey, look, we gave this money to a Democrat. But you know where it's really going to go. And I think it's sickening. But separately, this is the kind of thing that must be done by Congress. Even if you think it's a good idea, and I don't know any honest person who does, but even if you think it's a good idea, Congress is in charge of spending money. And it's got to be illegal for the Trump administration to siphon this money away from something that was authorized by Congress and spend it on something that wasn't. And for me, that's actually every bit as big a problem as the corruption of all the rest of it, is having the executive branch accumulate power that it must not have. And we need way more Republicans saying, you cannot do this. Whether or not they like Trump, whether or not they think there are people who deserve money, we need more members of Congress standing up for the prerogatives of Congress and saying, this is our job, not yours, and we are not going to let you steal power that the Constitution says you don't have. So that whole thing is a nightmare, and it's a very, very bad look. But I think Trump is completely unleashed now. I don't think anything is going to rein him in. I don't think that his acting attorney general is going to rein him in. His acting attorney general, as I said, his former personal attorney, he's as much a bootlicker, ring kisser of Donald Trump as there has ever been. Now, I do think this will make it somewhat difficult for Todd Blanche to be confirmed as the attorney general if Trump were to send his name up to be the permanent nominee to be AG. And so I'm thinking more and more that it's going to be Lee Zeldin, who is currently running EPA, or someone like that. Okay, let me get back to the corruption. I said that this slush fund is the second most corrupt thing I've seen. But the most corrupt thing I've seen, and it's part of the same settlement, but was only released later as part of the information, is that the Department of Justice has said that they are forever barred from going after Donald Trump, any member of his family, or any affiliated people, which is not defined, for any previous crimes or potential civil actions that could have come about based on auditing Trump's tax returns or apparently anything else that is information the government already has. Now, if any of these people commit crimes or civil violations in the future, that's not covered by this. But there was already some talk that that President Trump and his businesses were being audited, and based on potentially disallowed tax losses, business tax losses from the past, might have been on the hook for $100 million. Don't know if that's true, but it's been reported, New York Times and elsewhere. And now that all goes up in smoke. Anything that the government might have had on Trump or his family or their associates cannot be prosecuted or brought as a civil penalty or civil charge. This, my friends, is the most corrupt thing I have seen from the American government in a long time. And I am not just saying this because of some disdain for Trump, right? Like I said before, I don't like Trump very much, but I don't hate him either. I think he's good at some things, bad at others. As I said before, populists get some things right and some things wrong, and it's always by accident. And that's just what Trump is. But this is a true corruption of the justice system. This must not be allowed to stand. This is acid being poured on the foundation of our country. And if it were any other president doing the same thing, I would have the exact same reaction. And I hope the rest of you would too. But I think there are so many Republicans still afraid of Trump, maybe more afraid than ever after Bill Cassidy lost his primary last week, after Thomas Massie lost his primary on Tuesday, after what happened in Indiana to the folks who decided in the state Senate who decided to go against Trump's will on redistricting. Trump has an iron grip on most people in this party. But you know what? They're going along with this corruption is a disaster for the country, and they need to grow a pair and stand up. It's not standing up against Trump. It's standing up against corruption. Unfortunately, I have very little faith that they will. Sorry to leave you on a downer of a note there. I just needed to get all that off my chest. Very curious what you think. Please share some thoughts in the comments.